The distress signal traveled through the void for 17 days before it found anyone who cared enough to answer. Council Speaker Lyra had authorized its broadcast with trembling hands, her crystalline skin flickering with the pale blue of desperation. The Ravagers had come without warning, their ships tearing through the orbital defense platforms like they were made of paper. Not that the platforms had been designed for war. Nothing in the Orlan system was designed for war. The Galactic Cooperative had eliminated such barbarism 3,000 years ago, or so the history files claimed. Lyra stood in the emergency command center deep beneath the capital city, watching the surface monitors as another evacuation ship exploded in the upper atmosphere. The Ravagers were hunting them for sport now. Food stores, medical supplies, civilians, nothing was off limits to these pirates. Her people were dying by the thousands, and the Cooperative's promise of protection had proven as empty as the space between stars. "Any response to the distress call?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Her aide, a young Orlani named Finn, shook his head. His skin had gone gray with stress. "The nearest cooperative fleet is 6 weeks away. They suggest we negotiate with the attackers." Lyra wanted to laugh, but her species had forgotten how to make that sound bitter. Negotiate. With creatures who had just fired on a hospital ship. The cooperative had become so peaceful, so certain of their moral superiority, that they had forgotten what to do when someone simply refused to play by the rules. Far across the galaxy, in a system the cooperative had never bothered to survey, a listening post detected the signal. The technician on duty almost dismissed it as background noise. Almost. Something about the mathematical patterns caught his attention, a desperate, repeating plea for help. He forwarded it to his supervisor. She forwarded it up the chain. Within 6 hours, it reached Admiral Torres. Rebecca Torres had spent 30 years in the Terran Defense Fleet. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, put down the Mars Rebellion, and escorted colony ships to the edge of explored space. She was not a woman who ignored distress calls. She stood in the Fleet Command Center, reading the translated message for the 3rd time. The translation software was doing its best, but some things came through clearly enough. Civilian population under attack. Thousands dead. "Please help. What do we know about the source?" she asked. The intelligence officer pulled up a star map. "The signal came through an unstable wormhole we've been monitoring for 2 years. We've never sent anything through it. Too risky? The system on the other side is approximately 400 light-years from Earth, assuming the wormhole is stable enough for transit. And the attackers? Unknown. The signal mentions something called the Galactic Cooperative, but we've never encountered them." Torres studied the map. 400 light-years. That was first contact territory. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone. Now they had their answer, and it came with a price tag attached. She could send a probe, wait for authorization from Earth, follow proper protocols. But proper protocols took weeks, and the message had been clear. People were dying right now. Prepare the hammer, the retribution, and the vigilance for immediate deployment. "Full combat loadout." The intelligence officer hesitated. "Ma'am, we don't know what we're jumping into. This could be a trap or a war we don't understand." "It could be," Torres agreed. "Or it could be people who need help and have nowhere else to turn. We're going to find out which." The 3 warships departed within 12 hours. They were not exploration vessels. They were not diplomatic ships. The Terran Defense Fleet had learned long ago that the universe was not a friendly place. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Their hulls were designed to withstand impacts that would vaporize civilian craft. Their crews trained constantly for combat scenarios that assumed the worst possible outcomes. Captain David Ross commanded the Hammer. He was 42 years old, steady under pressure, and deeply aware that he was about to make first contact with alien life. While surrounded by enough weapons to start a war, it was not how he had imagined this moment as a young officer dreaming of the stars. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Mira Stone, ran simulations during the 72-hour journey through the wormhole. She was 28, brilliant, and carried a rage she kept carefully controlled. Pirates had killed her parents when she was 15. She had joined the fleet the day she turned 18. Now she was finally going to do something about it. "What if they're more advanced than us?" she asked during one of the planning sessions. Ross considered that. "Then we'll try diplomacy first. But if they're attacking civilians, advancement won't matter much. Some things are wrong no matter what technology you have." When the 3 ships emerged from the wormhole, they found a system on fire. Dozens of ships orbited a blue-green planet, and even from a distance the scanner readings were clear. Weapons fire, debris fields, distress beacons by the hundreds. Ross activated the ship-wide communication. All hands, this is the captain. We came here to answer a distress call. It looks like we arrived just in time, or maybe just late enough to be angry about it. Either way, we're going to make sure whoever sent that call lives to regret asking Earth for help, because we're the kind of neighbors who actually show up. The Hammer and her sister ships accelerated toward the battle. The Orlani sensors detected them immediately. 3 ships, small compared to the Ravager fleet, but reading impossibly dense on the mass detectors. And they were moving fast, faster than any ship in the cooperative could manage without killing the crew. Lyra received the report from the orbital observation post. 3 unknown vessels approaching. Configuration suggests military design. They're not cooperative. Finn's skin flickered with confused hope. Then who answered us? On the surface, the Ravagers also noticed the newcomers. Warlord Grath laughed when he saw the numbers. 3 ships against his fleet of 30. Whatever species this was, they were either incredibly stupid or incredibly confident. He looked forward to teaching them the difference. Neither the Orlani nor the Ravagers understood what was about to happen. They had never met humans before. They had never encountered a species from a death world. They were about to learn what happened when predators evolved intelligence, built starships, and decided they gave a damn about strangers in trouble. The Hammer opened a communication channel to the Ravager fleet. Ross kept his voice level professional. Attention attacking vessels. This is the Terran defense ship Hammer. You are ordered to cease fire immediately and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. The Ravagers did not bother to respond. They had never heard of Terra. They did not know what humans were, and that ignorance was about to cost them everything. The silence after Ross's warning stretched for exactly 45 seconds. Then the Ravagers opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the void toward the 3 human ships, the kind of weapons that had torn through Orlani defense platforms like wet paper. Ross watched them approach on the tactical display without changing expression. Evasive pattern Delta, he said calmly. Return fire when in range. The Hammer rolled, a maneuver that would have liquefied an Orlani crew under the G-forces. The human crew barely noticed. Their bodies adapted to a world where gravity pulled 3 times harder than the galactic standard. The plasma bolts missed, all of them. The Ravagers fired again, confused now, and again the human ships danced through the incoming fire like it was moving in slow motion. Below, in the emergency command center, Lyra watched her displays in disbelief. What are they doing? Those maneuvers should be impossible. Finn was running calculations, his crystalline fingers flying across the controls. Speaker, their hulls are reading at density levels that don't make sense. And the acceleration forces they're pulling. He stopped, rechecked his numbers. Their crews should be dead. Nothing survives that kind of stress. Unless they evolved somewhere that made them stronger, Lyra said quietly. The implications terrified her. What kind of world created beings who could withstand forces that would kill her people instantly? On the Hammer's bridge, Lieutenant Mira Stone studied the enemy ships with cold precision. She had been waiting for this since she was 15 years old. Tactical analysis complete, sir. Enemy vessels show standard cooperative pattern shielding. Energy weapons, no kinetic weaponry, no nuclear capability. They're basically civilian ships with guns bolted on. Ross nodded. Weapons free. Target their engines. I want prisoners to question. Sir, wouldn't it be faster to just... I said engines, Lieutenant. We're here to help, not commit genocide. Mira's jaw tightened, but she followed orders. The Hammer's railgun spoke once. A tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed and crossed the distance to the nearest Ravager ship in under 2 seconds. It punched through the shield like it wasn't there, through the hull and out the other side. The ship's engines exploded. Dead in space, the railgun spoke again. Another Ravager crippled. And again. By the time the Ravagers understood what was happening, 5 of their ships were drifting hulks. The human ships were using weapons that simply ignored their defenses. The Galactic Cooperative had banned kinetic weapons 3,000 years ago as too barbaric, too unpredictable, too final. Humans had never received that memo. Warlord Grath watched his fleet die and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. He screamed orders at his remaining ships. Concentrate fire. All vessels on the lead ship. Bring it down now. 25 Ravager ships turned their full firepower on the hammer. The space around it became a storm of plasma and particle beams. The human ship's shields flared, flickered, and held. Barely. Warning lights lit up across the bridge. Forward shields at 40%, the engineering officer reported. They're hitting us hard, sir. Ross made his decision in less than a second. Launch missiles. Full spread. Nuclear tips, the bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. Nuclear weapons were considered weapons of mass destruction by cooperative standards. Using them in space combat was unthinkable. But Ross had seen the readings from the planet below. The Ravagers had fired on hospitals, on evacuation ships, on civilians who had done nothing except exist in a system the pirates wanted to plunder. They had made their choice. Now he was making his. Missiles away, Mira reported, and her voice carried grim satisfaction. 48 nuclear-tipped missiles launched from the 3 human ships. The Ravagers tried to shoot them down. They destroyed 23. The other 25 reached their targets. Nuclear fire bloomed in the void like terrible flowers. When the light faded, 8 Ravager ships were gone. Simply gone. Vaporized. Another 6 were burning wrecks, their hulls split open and venting atmosphere. The remaining ships broke. Discipline shattered. They scattered in all directions, jumping to faster-than-light travel without coordination or planning. Within minutes, only Grath's flagship and 2 escort vessels remained, their engines too damaged to jump. Lyra watched it all happen. 15 minutes. The humans had arrived 15 minutes ago. In that time, they had destroyed or disabled more than half the Ravager fleet. The attackers who had terrorized her people for weeks, who had seemed invincible, had been broken by 3 ships crewed by aliens she had never heard of. "Get me a communication channel to those ships," she ordered. Now. It took 3 minutes to establish the connection. When Lyra's image appeared on the hammer's main screen, Ross studied her carefully. Crystalline skin that flickered with color like living opal. 4 arms. Large eyes adapted for low light. She looked fragile, beautiful, and absolutely terrified. "This is Council Speaker Lyra of the Orlani people," she said, and the translation software turned her melodic speech into flat English. "You answered our distress call. We are grateful beyond words. But I must ask, what are you?" Ross glanced at Mira, then back at the screen. "We're human. From a planet called Earth. We picked up your distress signal and came to help." "Help," Lyra repeated as if testing the word. "You destroyed an entire fleet in minutes. You use weapons we haven't seen in millennia. Your ships move like nothing in the cooperative. What kind of species are you?" It was a fair question. Ross wished he had a better answer. "We're from what our scientists call a Class 12 world. High gravity, aggressive ecosystem, extreme weather. It made us tough. We didn't know anyone else was out here. We just knew someone needed help and we could provide it." Lyra's skin shifted to a pale blue. Ross didn't know what it meant, but he guessed it wasn't good. Class 12? The highest classification in cooperative records is Class 9. Those worlds are considered uninhabitable death traps. Nothing should be able to evolve intelligence on a Class 12 world. "Well," Ross said with a slight smile, "we're apparently stubborn." Before Lyra could respond, the communication cut out. The Vigilance was reporting activity from Grath's flagship. The Warlord was attempting to broadcast on all frequencies, sending coordinates and data about the human ships to whatever Ravager bases would listen. "He's calling for reinforcements," Mira said. "If he gets that message out, then they'll come prepared next time," Ross finished. "Vigilance, disable that ship's communication array. Retribution, prepare boarding teams. I want him alive." The Vigilance fired once precisely, and Grath's communication equipment exploded into sparks. The Warlord slumped in his command chair, defeated. He had underestimated these humans. He had thought them weak because he had never seen them before. But weakness was not the same as unfamiliarity. The Ravagers had learned this lesson the hard way. An hour later, Grath was in the Hammer's brig, behind bars that could hold anything short of a plasma torch. Ross stood outside the cell, studying the alien pirate. Grath was large, heavily muscled, with thick gray skin and too many teeth. He looked like evolution's answer to the question, what if we made something that could kill everything? "You're going to regret this," Grath said in broken Orlani, which the translation software rendered into English. "You don't know what you've started. The Ravagers have hundreds of ships, Thousands of warriors. We will come back. Ross nodded slowly. Good, because if you do, we'll be ready. And next time we won't aim for the engines. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Where we come from, attacking civilians is considered the worst kind of cowardice. You're lucky we're trying to be diplomatic. The next humans you meet might not be so generous. Back on the bridge, Ross opened a channel to Lyra. The council speaker had been waiting, her skin now a confused mixture of colors. We need to talk, Ross said. About your galactic cooperative, about why no one came to help you, and about what Earth wants out of this situation. Lyra's skin settled on a steady purple. Curiosity, Ross would learn later. What do you want? Ross thought about that. About the 3 ships floating in orbit above a world of strangers. About first contact happening over the burning wreckage of a battle. About humanity stepping onto a galactic stage without knowing the rules. Honestly, we're still figuring that out. 3 days after the battle, Ross walked on the surface of an alien world for the first time. The gravity felt wrong, too light, like he might float away if he moved too quickly. The sky was the wrong color, a pale violet instead of blue. The air smelled of something like cinnamon mixed with rain. But the devastation was familiar enough. Destroyed buildings, burn marks, the universal language of violence. Lyra met him at the landing site with an escort of Orlani officials. She wore what Ross assumed was formal attire, woven metal strands that chimed softly as she moved. Her skin was a steady green now, which his briefing notes suggested indicated cautious optimism. Captain Ross, she said, and the translation was getting better, picking up nuance. Welcome to Orlan Prime, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Ross looked at the ruined city behind her. How many did you lose? 17,000 confirmed dead. Another 30,000 missing. The Ravagers were thorough. Her skin flickered darker. The cooperative says help is coming. In 4 more weeks, 4 weeks. Ross kept his expression neutral, but inside he was angry. What kind of alliance left its members to die for a month while help crawled across space at a leisurely pace? But that was a question for later. Right now, he had a more immediate problem. Speaker Lyra, we need to discuss something important. My crew, we're going to need special accommodations while we're on your world. Our species evolved differently than yours. Lyra gestured gracefully with 2 of her arms. Of course. We've prepared quarters in the Capitol building. Our finest rooms. That's appreciated, but I mean physically. Our world has much higher gravity than yours. We're stronger than you. Much stronger. If one of my crew accidentally bumped into one of your people, he let the sentence hang. Lyra's skin went pale blue again. Understanding. And fear. How much stronger? Ross gestured to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Mira Stone, who had accompanied him to the surface. Lieutenant, can you demonstrate? Carefully. Mira walked to a nearby piece of rubble, a chunk of wall that had fallen during the attack. It was roughly the size of a small car. She bent down, got her hands under it, and lifted. The massive stone rose smoothly, held steady at chest height. She carried it 10 meters and set it down gently, then returned without breathing hard. Every Orlani in the escort had gone gray with shock. Lyra's forearms trembled. That stone weighs, that should require machinery. On your world, probably, Ross agreed. On ours, it's heavy but manageable. This is why we need to be careful. We'll wear limiters that restrict our strength. We'll move slowly. We'll do everything we can to avoid accidents. But you need to understand what we are, what we're capable of. Lyra's skin cycled through several colors before settling on purple again. Your world shaped you into this. What kind of place creates such strength? Mira spoke for the first time, her voice quiet. A place where everything is trying to kill you. High gravity. Extreme weather. Predators that make your Ravagers look gentle. We didn't become strong because we wanted to. We became strong because anything weaker died. The Orlani were silent. Finn, the young aide Ross had noticed in the background, finally spoke. And yet you came to help us. Beings powerful enough to destroy cities came to save strangers. Why? Ross met his gaze. Because strength without compassion is just cruelty. We've learned that lesson the hard way. Over thousands of years of our own history. Now we're trying to do better. The tour of the city was sobering. Everywhere Ross looked, he saw families searching through rubble for lost loved ones. Medical centers overwhelmed with wounded. Children who had lost parents, parents who had lost children. War had a universal face, and it was always ugly. But he also saw hope. Orlani rebuilding, organizing, helping each other. They had been devastated, but they had not been broken. Something about that reminded Ross why he had joined the fleet in the first place. Not to make war, to protect people who deserved protection. That evening, Lyra invited Ross and Mira to a formal council session. The council chambers were beautiful, all flowing curves and colored light, but the atmosphere was tense. 47 council members attended, representing different regions of Orlan Prime. Many of them had skin colors Ross was learning to recognize as fear, anger, and grief. Captain Ross, one of the elder counselors, began, "We are grateful for your intervention, but we must address the uncomfortable truth. You used weapons of mass destruction in our space, nuclear weapons. The Galactic Cooperative banned such weapons 3,000 years ago as barbaric and excessive. Ross had been expecting this. With respect, Counselor, we didn't know that. Earth has never been contacted by your cooperative. We used the weapons we had to save your people as quickly as possible. The Ravagers were killing thousands. Every minute we delayed cost lives. But nuclear weapons ended the fight in 15 minutes instead of hours or days." Mira cut in, her voice sharp. "How many more of your people would have died while we tried to play nice with pirates?" The chamber fell silent. Another counselor, younger, with skin that flickered angry red, spoke up. "You're asking us to be grateful for violence. To celebrate warriors. We evolved past such things long ago." "No," Ross said quietly. "You evolved to the point where you could afford to be peaceful. Because everyone around you made the same choice. But that peace only works when everyone agrees to it. The Ravagers didn't agree. They came here to take what they wanted, and they didn't care who died in the process. Someone had to stop them. We were the ones who showed up." Lyra raised a hand, calling for calm. "This debate serves no purpose now. The humans acted with the information they had. They saved countless lives. Yes, their methods shock us. Yes, they represent everything the cooperative has tried to move beyond. But perhaps that is precisely why they succeeded where our peaceful methods would have failed." The council argued for another hour. Some wanted the humans to leave immediately. Others wanted them to stay and help rebuild. A few, like Finn, wanted to learn from them, to understand how a warrior species thought and operated. In the end, they agreed to allow the human ships to remain in orbit until the cooperative fleet arrived. That night, Ross stood on the balcony of his assigned quarters, looking up at the violet sky. The stars were different here. Foreign constellations, strange moons. Somewhere up there, the hammer waited, ready to protect or destroy as needed. Mira joined him, moving quietly. "They're afraid of us. Can you blame them?" "No, but it still bothers me. We saved them. We came across the galaxy to help strangers, and they look at us like we're monsters." Ross considered that. "Maybe we are. Not the kind that hunts for sport, but the kind that exists because the universe needed something strong enough to stand against the real monsters. That's a burden, Lieutenant, one we chose when we put on these uniforms." Below, in another part of the city, Finn watched the human quarters from a distance. He had been studying the visitors since they arrived, learning everything he could. The humans fascinated him. They moved with controlled violence like contained storms. Their casual strength was terrifying and amazing in equal measure. But it was their eyes that caught his attention. Human eyes were forward-facing, predator eyes, and yet when Captain Ross looked at the wounded and displaced, those predator eyes held something Finn's language did not have a word for: compassion from creatures built to kill. It should have been impossible, but humans, Finn was learning, specialized in impossible things. High above, in orbit, the hammer's sensors detected something, a wormhole opening at the edge of the system, ships emerging. Not Ravagers. These were different, sleeker, more organized. They broadcast galactic cooperative identification codes. The cooperative fleet had arrived early, and they were not coming to thank the humans for their help. The cooperative fleet consisted of 12 ships, each one larger than the hammer. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the silver-blue sheen of high-grade defensive plating. At their center flew the diplomatic vessel Eternal Harmony, flying the colors of the Cooperative Council itself. Ross received the hail 30 minutes after they emerged from the wormhole. The face on his screen belonged to a being unlike any he had seen before. 4 arms like Lyra, but where the Orlani were delicate and crystalline, this creature was broader, older, with deep purple skin marked by silver patterns that seemed to shift and flow. "I am Ambassador Prime of the Talvani people," the alien said, and the translation carried weight, authority, age. Representative of the Galactic Cooperative Council. You are the humans, I presume? Captain David Ross of the Terran defense ship Hammer. We responded to a distress call from— Yes, we are aware of your intervention, Prime interrupted. And there was something cold in his tone. We are also aware of how you conducted that intervention. Nuclear weapons, Captain Ross, kinetic bombardment, railgun slugs traveling at relativistic speeds, 47 violations of the Galactic Warfare Convention in a single engagement. Ross felt his jaw tighten. We saved thousands of lives. You butchered sentient beings with weapons that have been banned for 3 millennia. Those sentient beings were murdering civilians. That should have been handled through proper diplomatic channels, Prime said, and his forearms gestured in complex patterns that the translation software could not interpret. The cooperative has procedures for dealing with piracy, negotiations, arbitration, economic sanctions. What you did was throw aside thousands of years of civilized progress and resort to barbarism. Mira was at Ross's shoulder, and he could feel the anger radiating from her. He raised a hand slightly, signaling her to stay calm. Ambassador, with respect, those procedures take time. The Orlani didn't have time. They were dying. We acted with the tools we had and the information we possessed. If that violates your conventions, I apologize. But I won't apologize for saving lives. Prime's expression, as much as Ross could read alien features, suggested disapproval. Your species was unaware of galactic civilization. Very well. Ignorance can excuse some transgression. However, now you are aware, and now we must discuss what to do with you. The meeting was held on neutral ground, the eternal harmony itself. Ross brought Mira and a small security detail. The cooperative brought Ambassador Prime, several officials Ross could not identify, and Lyra, who looked profoundly uncomfortable. The conference room was designed for species of varying sizes and shapes. Seats adjusted, atmosphere was carefully balanced, and the lighting was set to a neutral spectrum. Ross sat across from Prime with Lyra to one side and a dozen cooperative officials watching from various positions. Let us be frank, Prime began. Your species presents a problem. You possess advanced technology. You have military capabilities that exceed most cooperative member states. You are physically formidable. And you have demonstrated a willingness to use lethal force without hesitation. These qualities make you dangerous. We make everyone dangerous if you define it that way, Ross countered. Yes, we're strong. Yes, we have weapons. But we came here to help, not to conquer. A cooperative official, an insectoid being with too many legs, clicked something that translated as skeptical. You say that now. But what happens when Earth decides it wants resources from weaker species? What happens when you disagree with cooperative policy and have the strength to simply ignore it? Mira leaned forward. What happens when someone else attacks cooperative members and you're still trying to schedule a diplomatic meeting? How many people die while you debate the proper form to fill out? The room erupted in multiple alien languages. Prime raised all 4 arms, calling for silence. This is precisely the problem. Your species sees violence as a first resort rather than a last one. You do not understand the progress we have made. The Galactic Cooperative has maintained peace for 3,000 years. Peace requires patience. Requires believing that any conflict can be resolved without bloodshed if we simply try hard enough. And what about the Ravagers? Ross asked quietly. How does your patience work on species who don't share your values? The Ravagers are an aberration, a remnant of old ways. They exist on the fringes precisely because they cannot integrate into civilized society. They exist on the fringes because you can't stop them, Mira said bluntly. You've made yourself so peaceful, so committed to nonviolence that you're defenseless against anyone who decides violence is profitable. Prime's skin darkened. We are not defenseless. We have defensive capabilities. Ross thought about the orbital platforms the Ravagers had destroyed in minutes. He said nothing. The silence spoke for him. Lyra finally intervened, her voice soft but clear. Ambassador Prime, perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. The humans saved my people. They used methods we find disturbing, yes, but they came when no one else did. They risked their lives for strangers. Surely that counts for something. Prime regarded her with what might have been pity. Speaker Lyra, you have been traumatized. It is natural to feel gratitude toward those who helped you, but consider the larger implications. If we allow one species to ignore our conventions, to use banned weapons, to act unilaterally, where does it end? We cannot build a civilization on exceptions. You can't build a civilization on principles that get people killed either, Ross said. Ambassador, I understand your concern. Earth is new. We're unknown. We don't fit your model of how species should behave. But we're here now. We exist. You can work with us, or you can try to pretend we don't exist and hope we go away. But I promise you, if another distress call reaches us, we're going to answer it. The conference broke for deliberation. Ross and Mira were escorted to a waiting room, while the cooperative officials discussed humanity's fate. It was, Ross reflected, a surreal situation. First contact was supposed to be momentous, historic. Instead, it felt like a disciplinary hearing. Finn found them during the recess. The young Orlani had somehow gotten clearance to board the Eternal Harmony. Captain Ross, may I speak with you? Of course. Finn's skin cycled through several colors before settling on determined purple. I want to understand you. Your people. I have been studying human behavior since you arrived. The way you move, the way you think. You are warriors, but not like the Ravagers. They destroy because they can. You destroy because you must. There is a difference. There is, Ross agreed. Though not everyone sees it, I see it, and I think others will too, given time. The cooperative is afraid of you, but fear and respect are not so different. You may find you have more allies than you think. When the conference reconvened, Prime delivered the cooperative's verdict. The Galactic Cooperative Council has decided on the following. Earth will be granted provisional observation status. You will not be permitted to join the cooperative at this time. Your military vessels will be restricted to your home system. Any violations of cooperative space or conventions will result in immediate sanctions. Ross felt the words like a physical blow. Restricted to Earth, humanity quarantined. Ambassador, if another species sends a distress call, it will be handled by cooperative forces. Like you handled the Orlani situation? Prime's skin darkened further. That is our final decision. Unless you wish to contest it by force? The threat hung in the air. Ross looked at Mira, saw the rage in her eyes, the desire to tell them all exactly what they could do with their decision. But she stayed silent, trusting his judgment. We will comply, Ross said carefully. For now. But Ambassador, understand this, you're making a mistake. Not about us. About yourselves. You've built a beautiful, peaceful civilization, but you've forgotten that peace only exists because someone, somewhere is willing to fight for it. We were that someone for the Orlani. Eventually, you'll need that someone again. When that day comes, remember that you sent us home. The humans departed. The hammer, retribution, and vigilance turned toward the wormhole, preparing to return to Earth. On Orlan Prime, crowds gathered to watch them leave. Some were relieved to see the frightening aliens depart. Others, like Finn, felt a strange loss as if something important was slipping away. Lyra stood in the observation tower as the human ships disappeared from sensors. Her skin was the blue of sadness mixed with the purple of understanding. Prime had won. The cooperative had reasserted its authority. Everything would return to normal. Except somewhere in the dark between stars, a Ravager outpost had received Grath's final transmission. They knew about the humans now. About Earth. About 3 ships that could break an entire fleet. And the Ravagers, unlike the cooperative, understood the value of such knowledge. They understood that a species capable of such violence could be a threat, or, if approached correctly, an ally. The message went out, coded and encrypted, traveling through the shadows where the cooperative did not look. Humanity has entered the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. The warning came 6 weeks after the hammer returned to Earth. Ross was in a briefing room at Terran Defense Fleet headquarters when the priority alert interrupted his presentation on first contact protocols. Admiral Torres pulled up the incoming message, her face going pale as she read. It's from the Orlani, she said. The Ravagers are coming back. Full-scale assault, over 100 ships. Ross felt ice in his stomach. When? They'll arrive in 36 hours. The cooperative fleet is there, but she pulled up tactical estimates. Analysis says they'll be overwhelmed in less than a day. The Orlani are requesting immediate assistance. From us. We're under sanctions, Ross said, but he was already standing, already planning. Prime specifically ordered us to stay in Earth space. Torres looked at him steadily. I know. I'm ordering the hammer, retribution, and vigilance to deploy anyway. If the cooperative wants to sanction us after we save their people again, let them try. 70 minutes later, the 3 human ships were accelerating toward the wormhole. Ross stood on the bridge of the Hammer, his crew already at battle stations. They knew what they were doing. They knew it might mean the end of Earth's relationship with galactic civilization. They did not care. Someone needed help. That was enough. Mira ran calculations at her tactical station. Sir, even if we go full speed, we'll arrive with maybe 4 hours to spare. The cooperative fleet will have already engaged. We'll be jumping into the middle of a hot battle. Then we'd better make an entrance, Ross said. Prepare all weapons systems. This time we're not holding back. The Orlani system was chaos. The Ravagers had brought everything. Cruisers, destroyers, carrier ships with fighters swarming like angry insects. They had learned from their first encounter, spreading out, attacking from multiple vectors, overwhelming the defenders through sheer numbers. The cooperative fleet fought bravely. Their 12 ships had grown to 15 with reinforcements, and they held formation, their shields flashing as they absorbed hit after hit. But they were losing. 2 ships were already burning hulks. Another 3 showed critical damage, and the Ravagers kept coming. On Orlan Prime, Lyra watched the battle from the same emergency command center where this had all started. Finn stood beside her, his skin gray with stress. Again. It was happening again. Has the cooperative command responded to our request? She asked, already knowing the answer. They say they're doing everything they can. They say more ships are coming. 6 weeks, Finn's voice cracked. We don't have 6 days. What about the humans? Admiral Torres sent a message. They're coming. But Prime has threatened to blockade Earth if they enter cooperative space again. Lyra made a decision. Send a message to all cooperative channels. Official public from the Orlani Council. We invited Earth, we requested their assistance. If Prime wants to punish someone, he can punish us. The human ships emerged from the wormhole like angry gods. All 3 had their weapons hot, shields at maximum, and they came in fast. The Ravagers detected them immediately, and this time they did not laugh. This time they knew. All Ravager vessels, this is Captain David Ross of the Terran Defense Fleet. Ross broadcast on all frequencies. You attacked civilians. You came back for more. You made a mistake. Last time we gave you a chance to run. This time we're here to finish it. Warlord Drev, who had taken command after Grath's capture, snarled orders at his fleet. Kill them. All ships concentrate on the human vessels. Bring them down. 40 Ravager ships broke from the attack on the cooperative fleet and turned toward the humans. It was more than 10 times the firepower that had faced them before. Drev had studied the previous battle recordings. He knew human tactics now, knew their weapons, knew their strategies. He was ready. He was not ready enough. The Hammer fired first. Not railguns this time, those were too slow for this many targets. Instead, the ship launched a spread of missiles that moved faster than anything the Ravagers had seen. Kinetic kill vehicles, accelerated to near relativistic speeds, each one guided by AI, smart enough to adjust for evasive maneuvers. 6 Ravager ships died in the first salvo. Just died. The missiles punched through shields, through armor, through internal structures, and the ships came apart like they were made of wet paper. The remaining Ravagers opened fire, and space lit up with weapons discharge. The Hammer took hits. Dozens of them. Her shields held for 3 seconds, then collapsed. Plasma bolts scorched her hull. The ship shuddered. Forward armor compromised, engineering reported. Hull breach on decks 4 through 6. Shields regenerating in 90 seconds. Evasive pattern Omega, Ross ordered calmly. Retribution cover us. Vigilance target their carrier vessels. The 3 human ships moved as one. The Retribution slid between the Hammer and the attacking Ravagers, absorbing fire that would have crippled Ross's vessel. Her shields flared white-hot but held. The Vigilance accelerated past them both, targeting the massive carrier ships at the rear of the Ravager formation. The Vigilance's captain, Commander Helen Price, was a woman who believed in efficiency. Her ship fired every weapon simultaneously. Railguns, missiles, point defense lasers, everything. The nearest carrier exploded. Its fighters, still attached to their launch racks, detonated in a chain reaction that consumed 2 nearby cruisers. Mira was everywhere at once on the Hammer's bridge, coordinating targeting, adjusting fire control, managing damage reports. This was what she had trained for. This was what she had dreamed of since she was 15 years old. Not glory, not heroism, just stopping bad people from hurting innocents, and she was terrifyingly good at it. Target the command ship, she told her gunners. That big one in the center. Hit it with everything. The Hammer's main railgun spoke. The tungsten rod, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance in under a second. Drev saw it coming and tried to order evasive maneuvers. He was still giving the order when the round hit. His ship, a massive dreadnought that had terrorized dozens of systems, split in half. The two pieces tumbled apart, spilling atmosphere and debris and bodies into the void. The Ravagers broke. Not all at once. Not immediately. But ship by ship, as their commanders realized they were not winning, they turned and ran. Some made it to jump distance. Most did not. The three human ships pursued relentlessly, cutting down anyone who had not yet escaped. The cooperative fleet watched in stunned silence. Ambassador Prime, who had been overseeing the defense from the Eternal Harmony, stood frozen as his tactical displays showed the impossible. 3 ships, 3 human ships against a fleet that should have crushed them, and the humans were winning. "Get me Captain Ross," he said quietly. The communication was brief. Ross's face on the screen was marked with a cut above one eye, some debris impact during the battle. His uniform was scorched, but his eyes were clear and steady. "Ambassador, as you can see, we had some business to take care of. You violated cooperative sanctions. You entered restricted space. You engaged in combat without authorization. Yes, I did all those things. Court-martial me if you want. But first, let's make sure everyone here survives the day." Prime looked at his tactical displays, at the burning wreckage of Ravager ships, at his own fleet, damaged but intact because the humans had drawn fire. At Orlan Prime, still whole because 3 ships had decided that regulations mattered less than lives. "The Cooperative Council will want to speak with you, and with Earth. They know where to find us," Ross said. "We're not hiding. We're not running. We're just doing what we think is right." The battle lasted another 20 minutes. By the end, fewer than a dozen Ravager ships had escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. The Orlani system was secure, and the Galactic Cooperative had to face an uncomfortable truth. They needed the humans. They needed beings willing to do what was necessary, even when it meant breaking rules, even when it meant getting their hands dirty. That night, Ross stood on Orlan Prime again, in the same ruined city he had walked through before. But this time Finn approached with a request. "Captain, I want to apply for exchange training. With your fleet. I want to learn what you know. How to fight. How to protect people who cannot protect themselves." Ross studied the young Orlani. "It won't be easy. Our training is brutal by your standards. The physical requirements alone, I will adapt, or I will fail trying. But I cannot stand by again. I cannot watch my people suffer while I wait for someone else to save us." Mira, standing nearby, smiled slightly. "He sounds like every recruit we get, sir. Angry, determined, and completely unprepared for what he's asking for." "Then he'll fit right in," Ross agreed. "Welcome aboard, Finn. Hope you survive your first day." The Cooperative Council chamber was older than most human civilizations. Its walls held recordings of treaties signed, wars prevented, and conflicts resolved through 3,000 years of peaceful diplomacy. 47 species sent representatives to this place. Now they were about to make it 48. Captain David Ross stood before them in his dress uniform, which somehow made him look even more dangerous than his combat gear. Beside him stood Admiral Torres, who had made the journey from Earth specifically for this meeting. Lyra stood with them, and so did Finn, who had spent 3 months training with the Terran Defense Fleet and returned with muscles his species had never developed, and a confidence his people barely recognized. "Ambassador," Prime called the session to order. He looked older than he had during their first meeting, as if the weight of recent events had aged him. "This council convenes to address the question of Earth's status within the Galactic Cooperative. Captain Ross, you violated direct sanctions. You engaged in unauthorized military action. You used weapons of mass destruction. Again, by all rights. This council should be discussing quarantine measures, not membership." "And yet," Lyra spoke up, her skin a defiant purple, "Earth saved my people, twice. While the Cooperative debated proper procedures, humans acted. While we tried to negotiate with pirates, humans stopped them. I ask this council, what good are principles that let innocents die?" A cooperative representative, a floating being of gas and light, responded in tones the translator rendered as offended. "Principles are what separate civilization from chaos. If we abandon them for convenience, what remains?" Admiral Torres stepped forward. With respect, we're not asking you to abandon principles. We're asking you to recognize that different situations need different solutions. You've built something beautiful here, a society based on peace and cooperation. Earth respects that. We want to be part of it, but we won't pretend we're something we're not. And what are you? Prime asked. Ross answered. We're survivors from a world that tried to kill us every day. We developed weapons because we needed them. We learned to fight because the alternative was extinction. We're not proud of our violent history, but we're not ashamed of it either. It made us what we are, and what we are is a species that will cross the galaxy to help strangers in need. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued for immediate acceptance. Others demanded stricter sanctions. A few suggested solutions ranging from restricted membership to complete exile. The arguments continued for hours. Finally, a representative from the Bellari, a species of small six-limbed beings who had been silent until now, spoke up. Perhaps we are asking the wrong question. We debate whether humans fit our model, but maybe our model needs to change. The Ravagers have grown bolder. There are pirates on the rim worlds, slave traders in the frontier systems. We have responded with diplomatic missions and economic sanctions. How many have died while we drafted strongly worded letters? Another representative, this one from an aquatic species called the Nerian, added their support. The humans exposed a weakness in our society. We have become so committed to peace that we forgot peace must sometimes be defended. I propose a new category of membership, guardian species. Earth would maintain military forces. They would respond to threats against cooperative members. They would do the difficult things we have chosen not to do. The debate shifted. Pragmatists argued that having humans as allies was better than having them as unknowns. Idealists worried about compromising core principles. Security specialists pointed out that the Ravagers had scattered but not been eliminated. More threats were coming. Prime listened to it all. Finally, he raised his four arms. Captain Ross, if Earth were granted membership under these terms, would you accept the cooperative's authority? Would you agree to oversight? To restrictions on when and how you deploy force? Ross exchanged glances with Torres. They had discussed this possibility during the long journey to the council chambers. We would accept reasonable oversight. We would work with cooperative command on threat assessment. But understand this. If we receive a distress call, if civilians are in danger, we will respond. We can debate the details later, but we won't let people die while we fill out paperwork. That is precisely what concerns us, Prime said. Your species makes decisions in moments that we take weeks to consider. Because we don't have weeks, Mira Stone said from her position behind Ross. She had not been invited to speak, but she spoke anyway. Because people die in moments, not weeks. You've built a civilization that works beautifully when everyone agrees to be civilized. We come from a place where nothing was civilized. We learned to make hard choices fast because slow choices meant death. Maybe you don't need that anymore. But the Orlani did, and they'll need it again. The vote took another 3 hours. In the end, 23 species voted for acceptance. 19 voted against. 5 abstained. By a narrow margin, Earth became the 48th member of the Galactic Cooperative, with special provisions that made ambassadors nervous and military commanders relieved. The treaty was simple. Earth would maintain defensive forces. They would respond to threats against cooperative members. They would share military technology and training with species who requested it. In exchange, they would receive access to cooperative science, trade networks, and diplomatic resources. They would be subject to oversight by a joint council, but they would retain autonomy in military decisions. It was not the membership anyone had expected, but it was the membership the galaxy needed. 6 months later, Ross returned to Orlan Prime for the dedication of a memorial. The monument was beautiful, crystalline structures that caught the light and threw rainbows across the plaza. Inscribed on the central pillar were the names of every person who died in the Ravager attacks. At the top, in letters that glowed soft blue, were the words, "They came when no one else would." Finn had graduated from human military training. He was not human strong. That was impossible for his physiology. But he was faster than he had been, tougher, and infinitely more confident. He wore a uniform that mixed Orlani design with Terran Defense Fleet elements, the first of what would become hundreds of exchange officers. "How does it feel?" Ross asked him. "Being the bridge between our species?" Finn's skin flickered through several colors before settling on determined purple. Terrifying, exciting, right. You taught me something important, Captain. Strength is not about how hard you can hit. It is about standing up when standing up costs something. My people forgot that. We let the cooperative make us soft. We told ourselves that peace meant never preparing for war. You reminded us that peace is a thing you build, you maintain, you defend. Lyra joined them at the memorial. She wore the insignia of the Orlani ambassador to Earth, a position created specifically to maintain the relationship between their worlds. The Council approved funding for 3 defense platforms in orbit. Human design. Finn will oversee their construction. We are learning, Captain Ross, slowly, but we are learning. We're all learning, Ross said. You're teaching us about cooperation, about thinking before shooting. We're teaching you about being ready when thinking isn't enough. Together, maybe we can build something better than either of us could manage alone. Across the galaxy, other species watched Earth's integration with interest. Some saw opportunity, protection they could not provide themselves. Others saw danger, a warrior species with access to advanced technology. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed. The age of unchallenged peace was over. Something new was beginning. In the frontier systems, where the cooperative's influence was weak, word spread among pirate crews and raiders. The humans were coming. The Deathworlders had joined the cooperative. And they did not forgive attacks on civilians. Dozens of outlaw operations simply disbanded, their leaders deciding that whatever profit they might gain was not worth facing species who thought nuclear weapons were an acceptable opening move. On Earth, the Terran Defense Fleet began training programs with alien species. Finn was not the only exchange officer. There were Talvani learning human tactics, Narration studying ship design, Bellari analyzing strategic doctrine. In return, human scientists gained access to technologies they had only dreamed of. Faster-than-light drives that did not require wormholes, medical advances that could extend human lifespans, materials science that made their ships lighter and stronger. Admiral Torres stood in the fleet headquarters, looking at a star map that now included cooperative space. Red dots marked defense stations under construction. Blue dots showed allied worlds. Green dots indicated new colonies being established with joint human-alien populations. It was ambitious, possibly reckless, definitely necessary. Do you think it will last? Her aide asked. This partnership? Torres considered the question. I think the cooperative spent 3,000 years proving that peace works when everyone wants peace. Now they're learning that peace requires protectors. We spent 10,000 years proving we're good at fighting. Now we're learning that fighting should have a purpose beyond survival. If we can both remember those lessons, then yes, it will last. On Orlan Prime, Ross prepared to return to the Hammer. He had been promoted to Commodore, placed in charge of the new Joint Defense Initiative. It meant more responsibility, more politics, less time actually flying. But it also meant he could shape how humanity integrated into the galaxy, could make sure they did not become the monsters others feared, while still being strong enough to stop the monsters that existed. Lyra walked with him to the landing pad. I never thanked you properly. For coming, for risking everything to help strangers. You don't need to thank us. It's just what we do. Perhaps, but not everyone does it. The galaxy is full of species who could help, who have the ability to make a difference. Most choose comfort over risk. You chose differently. That matters. Ross looked up at the violet sky. Somewhere up there the Hammer waited. And beyond it, hundreds of stars, thousands of worlds, millions of people who might one day need someone to stand between them and danger. It was a big responsibility. But humanity had always been good at handling things that should have been impossible. We'll keep choosing this way, he said. As long as someone needs help. As long as we can make a difference. That's the deal. That's what Earth brings to the cooperative. He boarded his shuttle. As it lifted off, he looked down at the city. Rebuilt, thriving, protected. This was why he wore the uniform. This was why humans had built warships and learned to fight. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to stand between innocence and the dark. The galaxy had sent a distress call. The Deathworlders had responded, and they would keep responding for as long as anyone needed them. That was the promise. That was the burden. That was humanity's place among the stars.